They were an unlikely pair who formed an intoxicating bond. How could a friendship filled with laughter and innuendo and scheming end in tears and slaps and late-night cigarettes? Well, I don't think it's all that surprising these two crashed and burned, but still, let's tell the story. It's Brandi vs. LVP, nuclear fallout. So we begin this tale in 90210.
Beverly Hills, darling, she.
To set the stage, it's one of the greatest seasons in Real Housewives history, Season 2. We're a few episodes in, the cast is pretty much getting along, so Bravo HQ decides to throw us two new potential housewives. Dana Pam Wilkey, one of the more bizarre women we've encountered on this show, and our first key player in this saga, Brandi Glanville. Now, Brandi was immediately unpopular with the other women. She came in with one foot in a boot and the other in a stiletto, which the other women found off-putting. She was also super tall, a former model, gorgeous, and read much younger than the other women. They were pretty blatant in their disdain towards her, congregating mean girl style in a corner to make fun of her, all while Brandi was within earshot. To us viewers at least, they seemed like a bunch of jealous haters, with the exception of the other major player, Lisa Vanderpump, who had somewhat of a fair reason to be wary of Brandi, and that was her allegiance to the first Vanderpump fallout victim, Cedric. If you remember, LVP had this guy Cedric living with her in season 1, who had a tragic backstory being abandoned by his mother as a child, eventually finding himself working for the Vanderpump Todd restaurant dynasty in London, and following them when they moved to Beverly Hills. He was living as her house guest in the first season, and they had a cheeky relationship, with Lisa's husband Ken getting increasingly more exasperated with his presence until they had some sort of blow-up fight, branding him with enemy status. This was a capital T thing by the end of the first season, with him getting his own segment at the season 1 reunion, and by season 2, the mere mention of his name would send Lisa spinning. So, needless to say, it was a major red flag for LVP that Brandi had previously been photographed with Cedric. Brandi is just like, I don't really know the guy. But still, LVP has her guard up against Brandi. This doesn't matter too much because Brandi has bigger fish to fry, namely the rest of the cast sans Adrienne and Camille, who all absolutely despise her, taking umbrage with everything she does. To be fair, Brandi had a far different vibe than the other women. She had absolutely zero filter and would say every waking thought that jumped into her mind. She was not as polished as the other women and was living in the wake of a major cheating scandal, as her husband had recently left her for country singer LeAnn Rimes, while also having other mistresses we'll soon learn a bit more about. The divorce really devastated Brandi, and any mention of this scandal or cheating in general would and seems to continue to trigger her deeply. This will be important later. But the women are really put off by Brandi, especially her vernacular.
I say all the time. Yes, I do. Who cares?
Her first few group events all go absolutely terribly, and Queen Bee, Kyle Richards in particular, hates her. Nearly all of these events end in a screaming match or some sort of conflict, with the infamous game night being particularly brutal.
All right, at least I don't do crystal meth in the bathroom all night long, bitch.
To viewers, however, it made Brandi the underdog because it came off like a gang-up attack against her. Lisa, for her part, didn't participate in the mob, possibly because she wasn't at any of these gang-up on Brandi days. Lisa is also more infamously a sniper from the side and much more subtle with any aggressive action. I think even if she was at game night or the Malibu beach party, she wouldn't have partaken. She was anti-Brandi by association, mostly out of loyalty towards Kyle, but is mostly keeping her distance and not really making any effort to get to know her until the cast trip to Hawaii, where we start to see some movement in their friendship. By this point in the season, the cast is focused on the legal mess between Camille and Taylor and her husband Russell. They've all started to warm up to Brandi a bit more and are starting to see her charm. Brandi can't help but be herself at all times, and since Lisa can't escape her, she leans into getting to know her and finds that she actually kind of likes her. Their senses of humor are incredibly compatible, and they launch their bit of Brandi being obsessed with Ken, which a lot of women wouldn't go for, but Lisa finds it hilarious. One of my, and I'm sure your favorite things about Lisa is her sense of humor, but it often comes at the expense of those around her. It's not always meant to be shady or a dig, but she often puts people down for comedic effect. I've noticed she does it with her husband Ken, so I don't really think it's meant to be read into all of the time, but we see a recurring theme with Lisa that other housewives often get offended by her jokes. Brandi, however, could play ball with this. She doesn't take herself too seriously and has a self-awareness that makes it easy for her to laugh with these jokes and cracks them herself. Throughout this trip, we see them get closer and closer, so it's no surprise when Lisa invites Brandi to her party at her restaurant, Sir, where they face their first hurdle. One of Lisa's employees, a pre-Pump Rules Sheena Shea, is one of the servers working the event, which sends Brandi into a spiral as she was one of her ex-husband Eddie's mistresses. This is one of the first signs of loyalty LVP shows Brandi, as she asks Sheena to leave the event. Brandi is touched and returns a favor at the reunion, having her back as LVP faces her first accusations of leaking stories.
You've never sold a story?
No, never.
Never.
I don't have to, Adrienne. No.
Taking her side against Adrienne Maloof, the housewife who brought Brandi onto the show. I think it's important to note that at this reunion, Kyle accuses LVP of being kind of an operator on the show.
I will say, though, being in a friendship with you is like playing chess with Bobby Fischer. Every move is so calculated above.
Thanks, God.
I'm just saying the
It's
truth.
true.
I'm sorry. What you're doing right now is doing that to me.
Which I think was one of the first major dominoes to fall in the fallout between Kyle and LVP. A separate story for another day, but I do think it's important to note that LVP was feeling betrayed by Mrs. Richards-Umansky, so she was primed to take on a new bestie. Which takes us to season 3, when we officially enter our Bestie Era, which lasts until about midway through season 4. Brandi makes it clear she's one of Lisa's closest friends on the show, feeling a sense of pride that she's the first to visit the new Vanderpump Palace, the drop-dead gorgeous Villa Rosa. They've been hanging out a lot in the off-season and have maintained this jokey, cheeky type of relationship, but it's still clear that they're in the getting-to-know-you phase. We see LVP meet Brandi's dog, which to me was a sign that they're not that close. Or at least that Lisa had not been going over to Brandi's place. Lisa is also still kind of trying to navigate how to deal with Brandi in public. Everyone else still has a bit of the ick with her, which is made worse when she announces to newbie Yolanda Foster Hadid that she slept with everyone in town, which Taylor and Kim turn into the hottest gossip despite it clearly being a joke. Brandi is made nicer with Kyle, but still feels a bit ostracized in group events when Lisa's not around, which is decently often because LVP is avoiding Adrienne, who she's majorly on the outs with after the whole accusation of selling stories at the season 2 reunion. LVP is acting like Adrienne accused her of something absolutely horrific and unforgivable and making this a way bigger deal than it really needs to be, in my opinion. But I don't know, she feels like this is the ultimate insult and an attack on her character, so she's not letting it go. Adrienne is realizing that she's not going to get an apology from Lisa for her part in their skirmish, and that there are consequences to being on the outs with LVP. So after making a scene, sending a whole entire tree to a party of Lisa she's not invited to, the two sit down and seemingly bury the hatchet, with Adrienne apologizing to Lisa, but Lisa not copping to any sense of wrongdoing. I can understand that she wants to hold on to this narrative that she's never sold a story, because even if I might not think it's the end of the world if she had, Lisa clearly sees this as a big deal. But I do think it would have done wonders if she would have owned and apologized for some of the lower stakes things, such as the whole Maloof hoof debacle. If you remember, Adrienne had made a shoe line that LVP had jokingly termed the Maloof hoof. Adrienne overreacted in the offense she took to the comments for sure, but I'm sure anyone with the ability of discernment can see that hoof doesn't have the most attractive of connotations, and understand why Adrienne felt it could demean the feminine brand she was trying to establish. But Lisa firmly sees herself as the victim, and even this early into the series, the other housewives understand that trying to get a genuine apology from LVP is a futile endeavor. This will be a recurring theme throughout Lisa's time on the show, and an issue that comes up in nearly every meaningful relationship that she has on the show. So LVP agrees to move forward with Adrienne, and so that storyline seemingly resolves, and we get a lot more attention placed on the friendship between Lisa and Brandi. We see Lisa really being her champion, setting her up on a photo shoot with Beverly Hills Lifestyle magazine, and supporting her money-making endeavors, such as writing her book and attending her night school for girls, a striptease class in Vegas that leads to some silly scenes from LVP. She, along with Ken, seem to genuinely want to support Brandi, especially when Brandi starts getting into some very scary business with Adrienne. To remind you, apparently going into the season 2 reunion and afterwards, the Maloofs had tried to get Brandi on their side, wanting her to tweet in support of them against Lisa. Brandi, being LVP's new bestie, declined the request, and the blood between the Maloofs and Brandi grew bad, becoming a legal matter when Brandi revealed some secret about the Maloofs, which was censored by the show, creating one of the biggest Streisand effects we've seen in Real Housewives history. To review the situation, because it's going to become important later, Brandi was wanting to prove that Adrienne was a liar, so she revealed that Adrienne had her children by surrogate, which did prove that Adrienne was a liar, as she had talked in great detail about giving birth, but the other women all viewed it as a massive privacy violation because Adrienne hadn't told her kids this. Adrienne went nuclear with the whole situation, demanding that Bravo censor the accusation, which of course made everyone Google what the secret was, making it stick a lot more than it probably would have had it not been censored. The other women, sans LVP, turned on Brandi, thinking that this was entirely over the line until Adrienne sent some sort of legal letter to Brandi, with Brandi thinking she was suing her, but Adrienne saying she wasn't. The group didn't like this move by Adrienne, especially because she was leading the charge on gang up on Taylor Day after Russell sent a legal letter to Camille the previous season.
Friends don't sue friends or threaten to sue friends.
Kyle's husband Mauricio was the only Maloof defender, and in a rare moment of theatrics, attacks Brandi for this at a Moroccan-themed dinner party. This is another instance of the Vanderpump Todds defending Brandi as Ken goes to war to defend Brandi's honor. Despite being in touch with his feminine side, we see that Ken has a very traditional gender roles type of side to him, and feels for Brandi not having a man to defend her in all of this mess. Brandi's role in the Ken and Lisa relationship is kind of murky, sometimes taking the role of a pseudo-jokey girlfriend, and sometimes falling into a more daughterly position, which will cause drama soon enough. But at this stage, Ken and Lisa are making no bones about their defense of Brandi. Brandi. Later on, friend of the show, the morally corrupt Faye Resnick, would famously accuse LVP of using Brandi as her mouthpiece.
I just wish that we would stop playing chess and everybody start getting along.
Okay, you've been talking to Carl.
This wouldn't be the only time that Lisa would be accused of puppeteering castmates, but let's keep the focus on Brandi for this video. Faye wasn't alone in thinking LVP was operating Brandi, with Brandi herself alluding to exactly this later, so I want to explore this idea a little bit. The accusation is that Lisa was still mad at Adrienne after all of their issues in season 2, but didn't want to be outwardly hostile, so she cozied up to Brandi Glanville unfiltered as she knew she'd do her dirty work. It's thought that LVP told Brandi to go after Adrienne and reveal to the world that she had used a surrogate so that Lisa's hands could stay clean, but Adrienne would still be outed as a liar. Now, I know that Lisa has a certain effect on a loud part of the Bravo viewing audience. Search her name on Twitter or Reddit, and you'll find a large swath of people who think she just hung the moon and is a perfect angel victim who can do no wrong, but I don't know. I really do adore Lisa. I think she's so funny and glamorous, and she brought such a wow factor to Beverly Hills. I think she's incredibly sharp and smart, but with that intelligence comes an ability to think a few steps ahead. People accuse her of selling stories or saying she told Brandi or Teddy or Lisa Rinna or whoever to do something, but I think the issue is in semantics. I think that she won't directly tell any of her loudmouth friends what to do or say, but she might plant the seed and rile someone up a bit. I don't think she was like, Brandi, bring up the fact that Adrienne had a surrogate, but rather that the two were venting about Adrienne, Lisa perhaps mad at having her character publicly questioned, and Brandi perhaps mad at the Maloofs trying to use her against Lisa, and the two are talking about what a liar she is, and one of them brings up the fact that she used a surrogate despite sharing a birth story, which very much did not involve a surrogate. It's a clear example of the lying behavior from Adrienne, and they harp on that and what a hypocrite Adrienne is, and yada yada yada. Does LVP know that Brandi will go out and repeat that? No, but she's certainly mad at Adrienne, perhaps wanting to see her integrity questioned the way Adrienne questioned her own, and now someone is loyal to her, who she herself is incredibly loyal to, is armed with some damaging information about Miss Maloof. That's more how I think this type of thing would go. So there could be some puppeteering going on, but it could also be organic. Let me know what you think. There is one other main issue that occurs between the two in season 3, which is the Sheena sit-down. Remember that one of Lisa's employees at her restaurant Sir, Sexy Unique Restaurant, was one of Brandi's ex-husband's mistresses, Sheena Shea. Bravo and Lisa are set to launch a spin-off series, the now infamous Vanderpump Rules of Scandival fame, and Brandi gets tasked with being the series tie-in. On Real Housewives, we start to see glimpses of Sheena going over to Lisa's and requesting a chance to talk to Brandi about everything that happened. Lisa is kind of hemming and hawing about the whole thing, but still brings it up to Brandi, who agrees to the sit-down. It doesn't go totally awfully. I mean, Brandi is pretty cutting, but I mean, of course she is, as I think Sheena is acting as an avatar to all of the women Eddie cheated on her with, and she's not shy about hiding the pain the situation caused her. But it's not a screaming match, and they agree that they can peacefully coexist to some degree, as both are important figures in Lisa's life. This then leads to the iconic transition scene in what had been an episode of Beverly Hills when Sheena stands up from the table, and suddenly we're in the pilot of Vanderpump Rules, getting Sheena's take on the whole thing. At the time, Brandi seems to be okay with this, especially because she likes being able to do a favor for Lisa, but this will come back up a bit later on in their saga. They end season 3 in a really great place. At the finale party, we get one of my favorite moments of love between the two of them. If you remember, the season 3 finale was a housewarming / secret vow renewal for Ken and Lisa. You can actually get further coverage on this in my vow renewal video. Lisa is upset at one point in the night because Adrienne, who's just announced her separation from her husband Paul, shows up teary-eyed and sniveling and pulls the focus away from Lisa and brings the mood, which was supposed to be about love and commitment, into a place of darkness. Brandi finds Lisa sulking, and they have a really sweet moment of Brandi giving her a pep talk, which kind of subverts this mother-daughter dynamic they would often slip into. Brandi also gets a shout out during the ceremony, showing that Brandi has a very special place in Lisa's heart. All seems to be well. This continues into the early days of season 4, but here we'll start getting into our third era, rising tensions. Early on in season 4, both of our major players are making moves. Brandi has bought a nice house, which she's very proud of, and is dealing with her on and off again relationship with JR, a guy she dates whom I have literally zero opinion about. LVP is a contestant on Dancing with the Stars, and while she's basking in the DWTS glow-up all contestants on that show seem to undergo, she's also incredibly busy dealing with being a mom, a wife, a restaurateur, starring on 2 Bravo shows, and juggling the insane antics the Vanderpump Rules kids are going through. This would have been around the time that Kristen fucked Jax while watching Drive while Sandoval was sleeping in the next room era, so yeah. LVP was going through a lot. She's pretty open about needing something to give, but is upset when she finds out that people were speculating that her soap opera-esque feint was staged. This is another instance where I just don't get why she's so upset about people saying this. It's so lighthearted and silly, but LVP seems genuinely upset not only when the other women rib her about this, but also when a member of the press asks her about it. I wish she didn't take herself so seriously. But this is where we start to see the slightest sign of a crack in the foundation between the two, as Brandi joins in on the ribbing with Joyce, as well as the Richards sisters who had done a whole reenactment of their own. She feels kind of guilty when she sees that LVP is actually upset about the speculation, and we get a bit of foreshadowing from Lisa when she tells us that she sure hopes Brandi wasn't involved in the conversation. One other stark change is that it's no longer just Lisa and Brandi against the world. They're still close, and we still see them hanging out a lot one-on-one, but with season 4, the social dynamics have changed greatly, and Brandi has become an accepted member of the group. OGs Adrienne, Taylor, and Camille have exited the show, so a lot of the Brandi hater club is gone. Brandi has also grown incredibly close with the OG almond mom herself, Yolanda, so she has another friend to lean on. We see Lisa get upset when Brandi invites Yolanda instead of her on a trip back to Brandi's hometown for a book signing, and a confrontation of sorts with Brandi's father, who she's had a falling out with. Brandi explains to us that Yolanda is a lot more down to earth and comes off less intimidating to her parents, who are more salt of the earth types, which is fair in theory, though I'm not really sure it's true, but whatever. But I can see why it would be hurtful to Lisa. Lisa had done a lot to make Brandi feel like a part of the family, and when the opportunity arose to show Lisa that same intimacy, she invited Yolanda instead. This doesn't become a big thing or anything, but I think it hints that the tight bond they shared was losing its grip. But it's not like now it's Yolanda and Brandi against the world, Lisa's still included, and they've decided that Carlton is a more palatable of the two newbies, so the four of them form an alliance of sorts, in opposition to the other side and Kyle, Kim, who's participating a lot more than usual, and the other newbie Joyce, whom Brandi absolutely hates to a problematic degree. Part of the crux of the issue between Joyce and Brandi is that Brandi warned her against going up against Lisa, saying that she's sensitive, which Joyce brought up in front of everyone. Brandi retaliates in a dehumanizing way, getting super drunk in Palm Springs, making weirdly racial comments against her, and consistently calling her the wrong name, even after Joyce told her it was a trigger. Brandi is absolutely unhinged about Joyce, getting mad at her for empathizing when Brandi's dog went missing.
It's not a competition, Joyce.
And claiming Joyce was jealous of supermodel of the world Gigi Hadid, despite no real evidence to suggest this. She crosses the line completely with her hatred of Joyce, and Lisa's put in an awkward position, especially in Palm Springs, in wanting to stay loyal and defend her, but also realizing that Brandi's behavior is indefensible. She tries to talk to her about this a bit and dissuade her from drinking so much, but Brandi interprets this as Lisa trying to mother her. This becomes one of the major issues between the two, because Brandi has an almost pathological need to rebel against any perceived authority. So when she senses Lisa is telling her what to do or how to behave, she forms a major resentment. Brandi has always felt a bit stuck in teenagerhood to me. She's fun, but she's impulsive and reckless, and will go against well-meaning advice simply because she's so abhorred by the thought of someone else telling her what to do. A good example of this is when she hurts her hand at a boxing class and gets upset when LVP encourages her to see a doctor. I get that this is a weird dynamic between friends. Brandi may feel like it's a way of putting LVP above her, but the reality is that LVP is a bit older and her life is much less chaotic than Brandi's. I think LVP means well, but this reaction from Brandi causes LVP to kind of walk on eggshells a bit, not wanting to upset her and deal with a big reaction, but also wanting her to behave. This juxtaposes Yolanda's reaction to Brandi's antics, who kind of just lets her do her thing, but is a listening ear, and gives her advice when Brandi seems more open to her. She'll talk to her privately, whereas Brandi feels that LVP is just putting on the motherly act for the show to come off as a good person. We'll explore this a little later, because with this tension between Lisa and Brandi, we usher in a new era, Takedowns A Brewin, as Brandi is not the only person who's got a problem with Lisa. In fact, nearly every member of the cast has a reason to be upset with Miss Vanderpump. In order to understand the big fallout, we've got to look at some of the ladies' other relationships and put some puzzle pieces together. Let's first look at where Lisa's relationships were at. First, let's look at LVP's Dream Team Alliance member, Yolanda. So, Yolanda and LVP had always been cool, but not super intimately close since Gigi and Bella's mom joined the show in season 3. Lisa actually brought her on, being connected through Lisa's friend and Yolanda's ex, the exceedingly wealthy Mohammed Hadid. While they were always friendly, they always felt more like alliance members rather than true friends. Yolanda feels this too, and feels that it's confirmed when Lisa cancels right as her painting party for Gigi is about to begin. Yolanda had invited all of the ladies to paint tiles for Gigi to put up in her NYC apartment, and I guess it was super important to her, so she felt slighted when Lisa canceled right as the party was about to begin. She's also upset that Lisa planned a dinner party, the one where the iconic "Don't You Dare Command Me" fight between Kyle and Carlton occurred, the same night as their stepdaughter's wedding, so she gets on a kick that Lisa is selfish and only thinks about herself. From there, Yolanda is openly anti-LVP, which is a little weird to me. Like, Yolanda is a bit of a stickler for the rules, so I get why she doesn't like that Lisa canceled last minute, but that's not exactly a friendship-ending offense. And the party date thing isn't either. We can't always accommodate every single person's schedule, and it's not that big of a deal to miss a dinner party. I don't know, I think that these things were more stand-ins to bring in the fact that Yolanda felt like Lisa's friendship didn't go beyond the show. She gets fixated on whether Lisa is her real friend or her Hollywood friend. She's also been holding on to a resentment of Lisa not visiting her while she was bedbound during a flare-up of her chronic Lyme. Remember that Lisa was very busy, especially early on in the season, and Yolanda was feeling slighted that LVP didn't take the time to visit her or check in. I really do want to dive further into this because I became kind of obsessed with their dynamic while making this video, but we're veering too far off of the Brandi vs. Lisa course, so we'll save that for another video. Moral of the story, Yolanda was upset with Lisa, feeling that she was too self-involved and was questioning how deep their friendship went. Kim was also miffed by Lisa. The two have never been close. There's no real chemistry between them. I don't think they'd ever speak if they weren't cast on the show together, but in season 4, Kim was really putting in an effort to be an engaged housewife and is upset when Lisa doesn't go to the graduation party she threw for her daughter. She had told Kim that she would be out of town, but apparently she'd come home early and Kim's hairdresser saw her that evening at SUR, causing Kim and Lisa to have a bit of a tiff. This isn't too serious. Again, they have like no relationship, but Kim is on the outs with her as well. And last, Kyle's not on great terms with Lisa, especially after Lisa made a big production over tabloid rumors that Mauricio was cheating on Kyle.
This is where the rumor comes that he's been seen with a younger woman.
She brings it up in front of Kyle's youngest daughter, Portia, though in a joking manner, and doesn't defend Kyle when Brandi brings it up at Carlton's house. Despite this, the two are starting to get back on better footing than they had been in season 3. Bear with me, this is going somewhere. There's also a big situation where Kyle gave Carlton a necklace, later bringing her a matching ring, that Lisa kind of inserts herself into. Kyle is upset because Lisa is saying the ring doesn't match the necklace, Brandi is upset that Lisa is stirring the pot, and Yolanda is upset that this is all going down at Gigi's graduation party. So yeah, LVP is rubbing everyone the wrong way as they go into their cast trip to Puerto Rico. Brandi, on the other hand, is starting to make real inroads with the rest of the cast, sans Joyce. Her and Kim had started to bond in season 3 on their trip to Paris, and had continued this cautious yet optimistic foray into friendship in season 4. They're not besties yet, but we see them hang out more and more, and even see Brandi open up to Kim about the tension she's feeling with Lisa. Brandi and Kyle were also getting into a decent place, so much so that Brandi goes to Kyle for advice on how to deal with her tensions with Lisa. She's concerned that she's starting to be iced out, as Lisa had been buddying up to Kyle lately and hadn't been calling her in the mornings like she normally would. Brandi vocalizes that she's feeling manipulated by Lisa, explaining that she's not outright told to do or say something, but she feels kind of prodded in that direction. She echoes Kyle's previous sentiments of Lisa's chess master friendship style and worries about the consequences of going up against LVP. She evokes the names of Lisa's previous fallen friends, Adrienne and Cedric, the latter of whom LVP allegedly had deported, and prepares to go to battle. This leads us into the main event, our next era, nuclear fallout. So ever since the hike with Kyle, Brandi had been on edge, not knowing how to behave around Lisa. She's now also upset that Lisa keeps bringing Scheana around. Lisa had even told Brandi to congratulate Scheana on her recent engagement, which Brandi was very put off by. She's been having some off-camera conversations and seems to know for certain beyond any shadow of a doubt that LVP knew that Scheana was Eddie's former affair partner and had intentionally sought out a friendship with Brandi in order to get Vanderpump Rules off the ground and running. She's really spiraling, and Yolanda is doing what she can to keep Brandi's mind spinning, and the two decide that they will confront Lisa about all of her misdeeds while on their cast trip to Puerto Rico. So the next day, they confront Lisa on the beach about all of her misdeeds. Yolanda starts things off, telling Lisa that Brandi is upset, feeling a divide in the group. She is confused why Lisa is suddenly being chummy with Kyle after she put her down the season before, notably saying that Kyle and Mauricio only get close to people when they're trying to sell their house, then cuts them off. Lisa says they've now resolved things and moved past it, but Yolanda doesn't let it go because she feels like she was involved in the situation by Lisa bringing it up to the group. This was just a terrible tactic on Yolanda's part to open up with. It really has nothing to do with her, and she could have perhaps made a bit of headway if she stuck to how she felt wrong by Lisa, not how she feels about how Brandi feels about Kyle and LVP's relationship. It's confusing why Yolanda is even upset about this, and gives Lisa enough of an out to say that Yolanda is nitpicking. Plus, at this point, all of the ladies have joined the conversation, so it's become a gang up. Brandi tries to pipe in a bit, saying she thinks she's the root of all this, but Lisa is already shut down and runs off to Ken and Mauricio. The other ladies are all upset that Lisa won't have an honest conversation, and while this is definitely a frustrating aspect of LVP, this was a terrible way to go about making her see the light. It's very rare that a housewife will be open to some constructive criticism when it's coming from 4 different voices at once. It's very hard for it to not feel like an attack, and for someone with a propensity for self-victimization, it's a disaster waiting to happen. While Lisa may come off tough and confident on the surface, deep down she seems to be very sensitive and seems very scared to see herself as imperfect. We didn't exactly need Alison Dubois to tell us that this would be a disaster. But alas, the ladies are upset and begin talking shit. Kyle is in a weird position, finally seeming to get back on track with Lisa, but almost more in a self-preservation type of way. As mentioned, the major thing rocking Kyle's world this season are tabloid rumors that Mauricio is cheating on her. She'd done her best to move past Lisa's jokes about the situation, but this all gets dredged back up when Brandi tells her that Lisa had tried to put those tabloids into her suitcase before their earlier cast trip to Palm Springs. Kyle is gutted, feeling like an idiot for letting Lisa back in. Kyle then confronts Lisa about the situation, and she denies it, but I don't know. My theory is that the tabloids in the bag thing did go down, but Brandi was more on board with it at the time, but had a change of heart and is now trying to pin the blame solely on Lisa, when perhaps it was more of a joint idea. Brandi and Kyle had a very rocky relationship throughout their time together on the show, and in our timeline had only recently started to get on good terms. She also, if you believe Brandi's account of the Adrienne surrogacy situation, is willing to fight Lisa's battles, and I can see her thinking it would be a good way to bring Kyle down until she saw just how terribly it was affecting Kyle and felt some sympathy due to her own heartbreak surrounding infidelity. They both knew it was just a terrible look and a cruel thing to do, so now don't want to cop to it in the light, but I don't think this whole situation would be made up by Brandi. It's too specific. I guess it's more of a she said situation in which you believe is probably dictated based on how you like Lisa, Brandi, or Kyle. LVP wants the whole situation dropped, but Kyle and Mauricio are very upset, so the situation carries over into the evening. On the bus ride to dinner, LVP asks Brandi what's going on, and Brandi tells her to ask Scheana, which brings up a whole new aspect of this issue. She confronts Lisa with this idea that Lisa knew the whole time that Scheana had an affair with Eddie and befriended Brandi as a way to set up Vanderpump Rules. She felt like Lisa was capitalizing off of her heartbreak and that their friendship had been a sham. If I were Brandi and I felt this way, I would be totally gutted. It would feel like their entire friendship had been a lie, and I'm sure she would feel used and commodified. Lisa denies the whole thing, but Brandi remains firm, saying that she'd heard it from one of Scheana's friends. I find this hard to believe that Lisa wouldn't know. Brandi herself found out about Scheana in the wake of Eddie's scandal with LeAnn Rimes when Scheana went on TV talking about her own heartbreak regarding Eddie, so it was in the entertainment news. Scheana was Lisa's employee, so how would she not know that she had inserted herself in this scandal, you know? I guess it's possible she didn't connect the dots that this was Brandi's Eddie, but I feel like the LeAnn Rimes thing would make it obvious. And while the Scheana affair thing wasn't the focus of season 1 of Vanderpump Rules, the Brandi-Scheana sit-down did provide the end for the show, a way to hook Real Housewives of Beverly Hills viewers into Vanderpump Rules. I can totally see why Brandi would feel upset by this, but it seemed to come out of nowhere. Since we're watching an edited show, it's entirely possible that this is something Brandi had been talking about all along, but that we're only seeing this now. But to viewers, it came off like a flip switched, and suddenly Brandi is upset about something that should have been a concern all along. Or at least since Lisa started pushing for the sit-down between her and Scheana. She did say this is coming up because an off-camera person confirmed it all to her, but I think the problem was that this was coming up along with the Kyle Mauricio magazine thing, and Yolanda being upset about Lisa being her Hollywood friend thing, so it was just one more layer in the Vanderpump pile-on. I think Brandi would have seen a more fruitful discussion if this was just between her and Lisa, instead of just one of many grievances the ladies were throwing at LVP. It doesn't seem like all is lost in this moment, as Lisa and Brandi both say they love each other, but when the magazine issue comes up at dinner, Lisa and Ken run off and leave the trip, further annoying the others. Again, a group against Lisa, especially when Ken is acting as her bulldog, just is not the way to get through to her. We've never really seen anyone get through to Lisa and have her admit to wrongdoing, but this is certainly not the way. So back in Beverly Hills, Lisa really isn't talking to anyone besides Carlton, who mysteriously didn't go on the cast trip. She's really upset about the Brandi thing, feeling like she had been such a good friend to her and was attacked as a repayment. At the finale party, Brandi and Lisa finally talk, and it really doesn't go well. Brandi isn't really interested in it being a conversation and doesn't want to hear any explanations or excuses from Lisa, and while I think she has every right to be suspicious of the Scheana thing due to how Lisa benefited from it, she really latches onto this idea that the whole friendship had been a sham, which I don't think is true and really upsets Lisa. We saw that they had a lot of fun together and saw that there was a lot more to their friendship than just Scheana or Adrienne or Kyle. We saw them opening up to each other, lounging around at home. I can totally understand why LVP would be insulted at this idea that their whole friendship had been a sham. Even though there's a lot to love about Brandi, I do think there's some degree of difficulty in being her friend on the show, as she's so unfiltered and reactive. She gets drunk and says inappropriate things, and as we saw, especially with LVP and Yolanda, to be close with her on the show means doing a lot of putting out fires and defending things that are really hard to defend. Lisa genuinely stuck her neck out for Brandi on multiple occasions and had shown investment in her success, setting her up on modeling jobs and encouraging her other business pursuits, such as her night school for girls and her books. But I do believe that it is also really difficult to be friends with Lisa as well, and I think Brandi was justified in feeling manipulated and used. Even though there are a lot of perks to being friends with LVP, she's so funny and fabulous and does give a lot of loyalty to those she has in her corner, I do believe that she's manipulative and puppeteers her castmates. I think it's subtle, I think she leaves herself plausible deniability, but I do think, for instance, that Brandi was riled riled up to reveal the Adrienne thing. I think she gives a lot to her friends, but I think the expectations of what she takes from them is also high. We see her housewives friendships as being kind of transactional, and when she feels betrayed by a friend, she wants them punished. I think this would be exhausting to be around, and you feel like you are constantly walking on eggshells being her friend, or worse, her former friend. Let me know if you guys would like to see a video all about Lisa Vanderpump as a puppet bastard. It's one I'd really like to do and one I've been working on for a while, but I know she's got a legion of stans out there who wouldn't be happy with this, so I don't know. This is kind of a test run if I'm being honest. So yeah, after this conversation at the finale party, Lisa seems to be kind of over the whole thing, thinking a friendship with Brandi is just not worth it, and Brandi seems pretty committed to this narrative that Lisa is the big bad wolf who is using Brandi as her plaything. The advantage Brandi does have is numbers, and that she's gotten close with Kim, is getting closer with Kyle, has Yolanda as her number one, and Joyce and Carlton wouldn't be sticking around. Lisa was leaving the season ally-less. So this takes us into our next era, Apocalyptic Wasteland. Their situation is pretty unique, or at least from the two previous fallouts I've covered in Bethany vs. Carol and Candy vs. Phaedra, in that both cast members remained on the show for a season after their big fight. Lisa is still feeling the burn of her takedown, delivering one of the most epic taglines of the season.
Throw me to the wolves and I shall return leading the pack.
And despite playing up the victim role, she still meets with Kyle and Yolanda, who agree to move forward with her. We also see the entrances of soap stars Lisa Rinna and Eileen Davidson, who quickly get taken under Vanderpump's wing, so Lisa's position on the defense doesn't last long at all. For Brandi, a big change is that she's grown incredibly close with Kim. The two hung out a lot in the off-season, to the point where Kim apparently considers Brandi her best friend. Brandi starts off on a great foot with Kyle, and seems somewhat interested in getting back on better footing with Lisa, but she doesn't want to settle back into their old dynamic, which she felt was Lisa in a superior position looking down on Brandi. She wants an equal partnership. Lisa, on the other hand, doesn't seem interested in Brandi at all. It's kind of interesting that she was so easy to forgive Kyle and Yolanda, but with Brandi, it seems like she's dead to her. I think she felt she'd invested the most in Brandi and put her reputation somewhat on the line in defense of her, only to have Brandi turn her back on her. To add on, Brandi had been talking to Radar Online, Beverly Hills tabloid of choice, and said that LVP used to live in Calabasas, which I guess is insulting in some way. This is way over the line for Lisa, and she really doesn't seem interested in mending with Brandi. Or at least she's going to make her work her ass off for it. We see the glimmers of this when Brandi, while on a hike with Kyle, calls to invite her to her housewarming party. She's holding strong on the phone that LVP is not the only victim in the fallout, but would still like to rebuild until her phone dies at an inopportune time, and she calls back from Kyle's phone, which doesn't go over well with Lisa, who is now left to wonder if the two are conspiring against her. LVP leaves the whole thing vague on if she's coming or not, but eventually decides to go. Even though she insults Brandi's parents at the party, it's seeming like there's some hope for the two. It's not going to come easy, but it seems like a reconciliation could be on the horizon. Socially, Brandi is just bombing this season. She immediately gets off onto the weirdest footing ever with newbie Eileen Davidson, as she's a super fan of the soap Eileen is on, challenging her own expertise of the show, and eventually, while trying to have a recreation of the show or something, throws wine in Eileen's face, which is obviously just an insane thing to do, making Eileen really not on her side. Rinna is there for the whole thing too, so she's anti-Brandi too, and Yolanda, who is also present, is just like, oh my god, woman, enough. You are becoming truly embarrassing. Like I mentioned, Brandi and Kim have gotten super close, but this starts to form a wedge with Kyle, as Brandi thinks that Kyle wants to see Kim fail. This comes to a head at Eileen's poker night, where Kim and Kyle, then Kyle and Brandi, get into a huge fight that turns nasty and even physical. From there, the relationship between Brandi and Kyle is worse than it's ever been, and the two spend the rest of the season on the outs. So Brandi really only has Kim and sorta Yolanda, while LVP has Rinna, Eileen, Kyle, and somewhat Yolanda as allies. LVP is put off but not surprised by how things are going between Brandi and Eileen. She keeps her distance from Brandi, but humors some of her attempts to get back on better footing, such as inviting her to a dress collection charity event, where Brandi attempts to give her an olive branch, literally, though Brandi does make the whole thing a bit weird.
Do you want me to eat your pussy? Sorry?
She also gets an invite from Ken to Lisa's surprise birthday party, and Lisa makes Brandi sing in front of everyone in an attempt to earn back her affection. But by the time the women take their ill-fated cast trip to Amsterdam, which you can get a full breakdown on in my Cast Trips Part 2 video, Brandi and LVP seem to be genuinely on a good path. We get the insane combo of LVP, Brandi, Rinna, and Kim go on a little shopping excursion and see echoes of the past as they joke around a bit. I was getting my hopes up until the women take a trip on a boat where Brandi is just being a general menace. She's calmed down a bit by the end of the night and is joking with LVP about some character on the love boat and wants to, I guess, recreate a moment from the show and wants to kiss LVP. She's really got to stop with these show recreations. LVP isn't on board, and then Brandi, for whatever reason, encourages Lisa to slap her. Lisa is also not on board for this, so Brandi takes it upon herself to slap Lisa. Lisa immediately tells her that this is wrong and she went too far, and this seems to be the moment that any hope for reconciliation dies. Brandi tries to buy Lisa flowers and apologize the next day, but Lisa is just over it. Everyone just seems to be kind of over Brandi at this this point. Yolanda isn't happy about the slap, and they both agree that it's best if Brandi doesn't attend their final dinner and instead goes on a date with one of Lisa's son Max's pals. Kylie's sure to point this out to LVP, who isn't happy about the whole situation. Back in LA, things have gotten worse for Brandi, as her father is in the hospital and she's just generally losing it. She's been having legal issues with her ex all season, which accounts for some of her behavior as she's clearly under a lot of stress, but I can also see why the other women have lost their patience with her. At the finale party, Brandi unloads on Lisa about not calling her when her dad was in the hospital, and Lisa really doesn't have a lot of sympathy to offer. From her perspective, I can imagine that she really had no interest in trying to invest in reconciling with Brandi, as she was really on her worst behavior and Lisa no longer needed her as an ally, as she was back on top, leading the pack, plus she now had a wild Lisa Rinna in her back pocket, so she didn't really need Brandi's loud mouth anymore if you buy into the Vanderpumpeteer theory. This would be Brandi's last year as a housewife, though we would see a few pops up as the years went by. I'm not sure if it was her fallout with Lisa or just generally being on the outs with everyone that did her in. One thing to note is that at the season 5 reunion, she did tell Andy Cohen to fuck off and brought up him dating younger men, so it could have been a Radziwillian instance of you don't insult Andy and live to tell the tale. I don't know. But Kim Richards left after this season too, and with the recent additions of Rinna and Eileen, maybe they just wanted to take the show in a different direction. After this season, we get the addition of Erica and then Dorit, and the show becomes heavily focused on glam and the lifestyle thing, with the drama shifting to more of season-long story arcs with lots of gang-ups and takedown seasons. Brandi and Kim were messy and easy targets for the other women, but would fight back strongly, so even if a lot of the drama stemmed from the two of them, things were fluid enough that the show never went stale. I think it took the addition of Sutton Strack, someone who's also messy and an easy person to rile up to create drama, to really get the show back on better footing. Vanderpump would stay on the show until season 9 when she stopped filming with the group in the wake of the Lucy Apple Juicy Puppygate scandal, but that's an entirely different story. It is interesting to see that a lot of Brandi's accusations that she was manipulative and would puppeteer her castmates would follow Lisa for the rest of her stint on the show, coming up a few times more, so if you guys want to see a breakdown on all of that, please let me know. As mentioned, it's one I really want to do, but I'm a little hesitant given the passion of our fans. So yeah, as mentioned at the top of their video, their fallout really isn't all that surprising, given that they both had a lot of social difficulty while they were on the show, but when they were good, they were so much fun to watch, and while I don't find their fallout, like, devastating, it still bummed me out. I find both Brandi and Lisa to be two of Beverly Hills' funniest housewives, and while they brought very different things to the show, they've definitely earned their spots in the Housewives Hall of Fame. So yeah, let me know what you thought of their friendship and fallout. Do you have a loyalty one way or the other? I don't really pick a side. I think they both had points, and I feel pretty equally about the two in terms of how much I like them. Both have aspects I absolutely love, while both frustrate me as well. So yeah, that's what I've got for you today. Let me know what other Housewives fallouts you'd like to see me cover in the future. If you want to follow me on social media, my ads are deeplysuperfish on Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. You can sometimes get little clues on what I'm working on if you want to see what's on the docket for future videos. And subscribe to the channel, give it a thumbs up, and share the video if you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for so much great support this year. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next one. Bye!